Hey, NFL fans, welcome to the Fantasy Football Show on Atlanta Sports Unlimited with Tom Pollen. I'm Dave Holcomb for another Saturday morning, early Saturday afternoon NFL talk. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to kick off with the Atlanta Falcons trading up in the latest Mel Kiper mock draft to draft Zach Wilson. So that obviously created some buzz in Twitter land and NFL social media land. We'll break down what Zach Wilson can offer the Falcons and whether or not it's a good decision to give up picks in order to acquire Wilson in April. We'll also get to some other quarterback offseason talk with Russell Wilson, connected to 4 different teams by his own volition, saying that he would like to go to these 4 teams this week, one of them being the Dallas Cowboys, who have their own quarterback questions with Dak Prescott this offseason. We've got trivia this week as well, and looking ahead a little bit to the NFL draft, we're going to break down Kyle Pitts' fantasy value in dynasty leagues. So stay tuned over the next hour. It's going to be real fun, Tom.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. It's, with everything that's happened this week, it's amazing how much news the NFL generates. A month after a game has been played, and we're still talking heavy into the NFL. It's amazing what they've created.
Yeah, and I think not to be Debbie Downer or whatever, but the NFL has gotten really good at this, right? And I think a lot of these stories that we're going to talk about today, I don't know if there's a whole lot of truth to some of them. And that's because the NFL has gotten so good at creating conversation that maybe won't end up happening. They're just trying to stay in the news, in the sports news with and on the minds of sports fans. So I guess the first question as we get into our first topic here with the Falcons, I mean, how likely really is it that they're seriously considering trading up to draft a position that, Matt Ryan isn't what he used to be, but he's still one of the best parts of their roster that really needs to be rebuilt. You have a top 5 pick, and you're going to use it on a position that, at least going into 2021, isn't a dire need.
No, it's not dire. You can make the playoffs with Ryan. I mean, if you restructure the roster well enough with him, he's taken a big cap hit. So restructuring the roster is going to be difficult, but then, his dead cap money is $50 million. So he's not going anywhere.
Right.
He will be with the Falcons in 2021. You got to start grooming somebody sooner or later, or you're going to be stuck in a 2 or 3 year rebuild, without a quarterback. And as we've seen time and time again, a franchise quarterback, you can't do anything without one in the NFL. You can't seriously compete without one in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I thought what was interesting about Mel Kiper's breakdown, and I guess I could try and pull it back up here on my my iPad, but one of the points that he made about the Falcons wanting to go up and get a quarterback is, the new front office is assuming that they're not going to be back here in the top 5 to take a quarterback anytime soon. And you got to take it when you have the opportunity to do that. I thought that was interesting because a fan would never think that way. A fan thinks from the organization's perspective, from maybe not really worried about keeping, a certain front office staff guy keeping their job. But it's interesting that kind of human element would play a role in a general manager saying, well, I'm banking on not being in a position to take a quarterback again. I got to take one now. I think that's kind of a dangerous strategy, though, because you're thinking more about your tenure and where you are as opposed to where the team and the roster is, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. You're looking at, I understand that thought that, when you're down there, when you're in that spot, you have to take the quarterback. And the Bears did that, a few years ago and missed, but you've got to take advantage of it when you got it. As a general manager, you hope that you're never in this position to have to, you're never in the top 5 in draft position. You don't want to be. You want to be optimistic. You want to communicate that optimism throughout the organization. We're not going to be down here again. We're down here because of the previous administration. We aren't going to be down here again. So,
yeah. But then, I think about Kansas City. I think about Houston, and they still landed quarterbacks, and they weren't in the top 5. They traded up. They had to trade up to do it, of course, and give up assets. But I mean, that's worked out fairly well. I mean, it worked out really well for Kansas City. And I mean, Houston's got problems, but they do have Deshaun Watson.
Yes, they do. Yeah, I mean, you could do it. It's ridiculous to say that you have to.
Yeah.
I think you don't have to. They could build their offensive line. I mean, this is an ideal spot to get your road grading guard or your big left tackle that is going to keep Ryan clean for the season. This is a perfect spot for that, but boy, it's a touchy place because you still got Ryan who can play.
It is a touchy place.
It's difficult because you got to kind of look into the future and say, okay, 2022, 2023, who am I projecting to be available? You really do need to look ahead in this situation and say, how can I get a quarterback if I need one?
Yeah. And let me reset us here just for a minute because I didn't give a shout out to our listeners. We want to hear from you. Send us your comments, your tweets. Follow Tom at TJ Pollen. Follow me at DM Holcomb. Also, Chris, thanks for joining us again this Saturday afternoon. We love having you here. With the point that you just made about looking ahead to the future, I obviously that's important, of course. But maybe I'm wrong about the Arthur Smith hire. But I liked the Arthur Smith hire because of his ability. I believe his ability to come in and work with Matt Ryan. And that's what I liked about the transition to Smith. And I think moving to a different quarterback, I mean, we don't have any. Smith did take Ryan Tannehill and give him, make him much better than he'd ever played before. Turned him into a franchise quarterback like he was.
He allowed him to play. Yeah, right.
Right, but I'm not as high on Smith as maybe a developer as I am as a guy that's going to be able to come in and maximize Matt Ryan and give him a ground game. That's what I like about Arthur Smith at the moment right now. I'm not saying Arthur Smith can't develop a quarterback. My point just is I didn't think that was going to be his first job with the Falcons. And that's why I'm hesitant to say that, with a lot of confidence that the Falcons are definitely in this market to get Zach Wilson and trade up to get him. It's one thing if he falls to him at 4, but to trade up to get the quarterback, give up assets when you went 4-12, you got lots of problems, and you're going to trade up to get a quarterback that's going to sit.
Well, remember, this is Mel Kiper, okay? This is his first mock draft. He's going to have another 24 mock drafts. That way he could sit, on the set on draft day and say, well, yeah, I did have him projected to go there. Yeah, but in which mock draft? Your 10th, your 15th.
Right.
So remember, this is early in the process. We haven't even seen free agency yet.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that has to happen before we get to draft day. But and that's the thing. Again, if you go to walterfootball.com, they don't have the Falcons trading up at all. They have the Falcons sitting at 4 and still getting a quarterback. They have same quarterback. They have Justin Fields going to the Jets. But I guess that depends on if the Jets feel like are you going to keep Sam Darnold or not? And I don't see why they should. But
that decision has not been made yet.
Yeah, that decision hasn't been made.
Right.
But either way, Now, I just looked on NFL.com this morning, and Charlie Casserly, who's a former NFL general manager,
Right.
has the Falcons trading back to number 8 for Najee Harris, who's a running back out of Alabama. Now, that might make more sense to a lot of Falcons fans.
I think the Falcons might trade that 4th pick, but I don't believe, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, Tom is the betting man on the show.
I'm the betting man.
But if I was, I would put money down that the Falcons trade that pick and they trade back. And that would get them more picks. It would get them an opportunity to fill out that roster with younger players and get a position more of need where they're drafting, as opposed to reaching for a player at number 4 that maybe isn't the 4th best player, or taking a quarterback, which I guess maybe Wilson's not the 4th best player either in the draft. But you get what I'm saying. If they don't love somebody at 4, trade back and get somebody that they like at number 8 or love at number 8 as opposed to number 4.
Well, see, I like what Casserly is saying. And I kind of agree with what you just said. Fill out the roster. A lot of cheap draft picks. The Falcons are in salary cap hell. I think they got the 30th worst salary cap in the NFL. Salary cap situation. And the only way to really attack that and still build a roster is to bring in more draft picks, bring in more young players, more affordable players, guys that are going to be with the team in the next 2 or 3 years when you feel you are a winner again and you're ready to contend and take on the Saints and Tampa Bay. Who knows? Who knows what happens? But, they got quarterback problems too, according to me.
I think that is the strategy to go with. And we can get back to Mel Kiper and where he sits in all this, but I ultimately think the Falcons are trying to create this narrative of, hey, we're interested in a quarterback. We're interested in Zach Wilson, to drive up the price of their own pick. Because if the Jets end up deciding we're keeping Sam Darnold, then there's going to be Justin Fields or Zach Wilson will be available at 4. And if the Falcons have already said we are in the quarterback market, that number 4 pick, that value goes way up, and they will be able to get more for it by trading back. That, I think, is the play here. Whether or not Mel Kiper has been told by Falcons organization that they're in the quarterback market and he believes it, or if Mel Kiper, I don't know how he determines his picks. If it's just it's what he feels is going to happen, or if he takes any input from organization. I'm not sure how he develops his mock drafts. So I'm not going to say that he's getting information.
Most people model their mock drafts based on what they feel the team needs.
I think that's what he does too.
Cross with impact player. And I think he does, but he comes up with so many different drafts with so many different players going to each team in the first round that it's hard to say what Mel Kiper, but he gets paid great money for it. He's one of the guys who gets paid for this. So,
my point is that I'm not sure Kiper I'm not sure the Falcons, their plan to try and convince people that they're in the quarterback market and they might take Zach Wilson number 4 is directly connected with Mel Kiper. I think Mel Kiper is just sitting. I think he's just sitting in his office and he says, the Falcons, I want to create some controversy. The Falcons could take a quarterback. I'm going to say they trade up, and this will be, this will get people's attention. I think that's his motivation. The Falcons have a different one to trade, and actually, I mean, Kiper's helping them because they want teams to think that they're interested in Zach Wilson.
Yeah, absolutely. They're helping him. They're helping them. He's helping them. God, Saturday morning. Hey, but the thing is, Dave, and this is what we talked about last week, and you're hitting it right on the head, is you want to put the rumors out there. So many of these rumors, and I tell fans, take 90% of these rumors, 95% of these rumors, and forget it. They're great for discussion, but they're not going to happen. The teams generate these rumors. You're right. The Falcons are probably generating these rumors and to get better value at number 4. That wouldn't surprise me one bit. So, you've nailed it on the head. The Falcons are leaking some information, and they want to see what reaction they get from that information. And
they're doing their due diligence, as they say in the NFL scouting world. They're sending their scouts. They sent a scout to Trevor Lawrence's pro day, I believe, and they're going to scout Wilson. They're going to scout Fields and do their due diligence and make it appear like that they're a possibility.
But see, if you look at it sensibly, I like Casserly's approach, where he sits down and says, the Falcons go back to 8 and take the running back that Smith can use. Take the running back that Smith is really going to value, that Smith can kind of build his offense around, using Matt Ryan as his quarterback. Najee Harris, Smith can do something with him. And I think it sets, if they get extra picks, it sets the Falcons up for more long-term stability and to be able to pick up better prospects later in the draft as you get into the second and third day. So, that makes the most sense to me, but everybody is going to leap on Mel Kiper's projection and say, well, Kiper said this. So Kiper's never, he's never wrong. But as I say, Kiper's never wrong because he puts 20 mock drafts out there and then he cherry picks when the selections are made.
Right.
So that's how it works.
So we're breaking down Mel Kiper's latest mock draft that has the Falcons trading up number 2 to draft Zach Wilson. Do you agree with Kiper or not? Is he full of crap? Do you like the idea of the Falcons trading up to get number 2? We want to hear from you guys. Let us know what you think. It's funny we haven't even talked about Wilson as a quarterback, and admittedly, that's not our bag, analyzing college players. But he is also not somebody that I'm real wowed about trading up for. And this is why. From what I've read, he's got sky-high potential. He's being compared to Patrick Mahomes from a playmaker perspective. We're going to hear that for years, people being compared to Patrick Mahomes.
Every year there's going to be a quarterback compared to Patrick Mahomes. It's just the way it is.
And I don't remember what Patrick Mahomes' floor was, but from what I read, Zach Wilson's floor is very low. So he's a risky prospect, and that's just not a guy that I like giving up picks for to go up and trade to acquire.
Right.
Again, it's one thing if he falls to you at 4, although I don't think a player doesn't really fall very far to fall to you at 4.
No.
But I don't like the scouting report from what I hear on Wilson as a quarterback. And that kind of leads us to the trivia question I'm going to ask you. But first, do you have any thing to add with Wilson and his scouting report? Is there something I'm missing? Is there something you like about him? Or do you agree that he's not someone that you would like to see your team trade up for because he's a risky pick? He's a risky prospect.
He's had, that's the problem. The scouting reports are so up and down on him. It's impossible it's hard for me to say because I didn't watch much college last season, and the schedule was so ridiculous because of the COVID-19 situation that it's hard for me to say, give my own analysis of Wilson, but I've seen great scouting reports on him. I've seen not so great scouting reports on him. People having a lot of questions about his ability, about it's hard to say, and he is a risk. So Mahomes, when he came out, the funny thing is Mahomes was not a can't miss prospect. Mahomes was considered someone who could be developed, someone who had a great arm, but they weren't sure about his overall talent. Well, when Alex Smith got hurt and Mahomes was forced into the lineup, Mahomes was supposed to be a developmental quarterback for a year. Forced in,
he was. He only played one game.
Yeah. All of a sudden, he's setting the league on fire. And we saw what he was, and now he's, baby goat. So it's it's hard to tell. But, yeah, Fields, it's a risk. You could end up with a high reward. You could end up, with a top 5 bus. You never know. It's tough to say. I would have to watch more on him, watch more BYU games, catch up a little bit to kind of get an analysis of him. Right now, I can only tell you what I've read, and I've read a lot of different things.
Right. Yeah. And I'm just telling you what I've read as well this morning and throughout the last couple months. And yeah, it's a real mixed reviews, as you said. And that's not really I don't want to take somebody that has this is just my personal draft philosophy, and you can be different. And this is a fantasy football show. You'll find out through the summer as we do our fantasy draft analysis. I am more of a safe drafter, and I think that's something I try to work on the last few years is taking more risks, because you can get a high boom guy and somebody that can win you a championship if you take a risk and take somebody that has a really high ceiling but a low floor. But me, I'm an overall positive thinker, but when I draft, I just think about guys' floors, and they scare me when they're really, really low. And that, to me, when you have a really, really low floor of a guy you're taking at number 2, to me, that is a dangerous selection, even more dangerous when you're giving up second-round picks to make that pick.
Yes, I agree. And that's the thing. Second-round picks, third-round picks, that's where you build your depth.
We just finished talking about the salary cap problems they have, and they need that depth through the draft.
Yeah, they need that depth. So I don't think they will trade for him. If he drops, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But I'm with you. I think, I go along with Casserly. I think they need to actually drop back a little bit in the draft and get more prospects out of this, because you're not going to be a Super Bowl contender next year. It's not happening. But you can win, and you can win with Ryan. I mean, you can still win with Ryan. You might be able to win with Ryan for another 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
and even if you're not a Super Bowl contender this year, you could become one in 2022 with Matt Ryan.
Exactly. That's not out of the realm of possibility. So why gamble on a quarterback? And I guess we're talking ourselves into this. Why gamble on a quarterback when you can start building that roster and building that strength around a quarterback? I go back into my misspent youth. When Jim Finks took over as general manager of the Bears have been losers for years. And I always loved Finks' philosophy, and I've always carried this forward with me. It's you build from the inside out. You build your lines, you build, you take your interior depth and you build out from there. So, and you can't do that. He was one, he never would gamble on a quarterback. He wouldn't gamble on a wide receiver. He'd take a lineman, linebackers, a lot of other players in the first round, and he built one of the best teams in NFL history. So, I mean, he kind of knew what he was doing. So that's my philosophy has always been build from the inside out. And the Falcons can do that if they drop back a little bit, take the running back, and pick up some second and third round depth. Quality guys who are projected as starters. They don't have to be stars. You don't have to get a Pro Bowler in every pick, but quality starters, and you can build a team that way.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And that the idea of the Falcons, or really any NFL team trading up to the number 2 pick to take a quarterback this year, leads me to our trivia question.
Okay.
And we want to, we're wrapping up the Falcons, the rumor that the Falcons could trade up to number 2, but we can return to it. If anybody has a last minute comment, send us your comments and your tweets. But the trivia question this week: in the last 10 years, a team has traded up to number 2 to take a quarterback 3 times. Can you name the 3 quarterbacks that were taken at 2 after the team traded up to take them? Traded up for that.
One of them is Mitch Trubisky. So.
Yeah,
but they traded from 3 to 2 to get to him, which they didn't need to do. Oh, yeah, killing me.
You got the slam dunk one that would have been really embarrassing if you missed. So you got that one.
I would say Kyler Murray, but I think the Cardinals were in that spot, so I don't think they traded.
He was a number 1 pick as well. So
okay. Yes, you're right. He was the number 1 pick. What am I saying? Boy. Number two.
And this is open. Chris, you can weigh in with some guesses, and this is open to our audience as well. In the last 10 years, there have been 3 quarterbacks taken at number 2 that were taken after the team traded up for that number 2 pick. Tom got Mitch Trubisky in 2017. The other 2, I'll give you a hint, were before 2017, but they've happened in the last 10 years. Who are the other 2?
Marcus Mariota.
He was number 2, but that was not a trade. The Titans had
that. Trade. Titans had that in the pick. Okay.
Yep.
You're killing me here, Holcomb. Killing me, Smalls.
Great line, great movie.
I was about to say, please tell me you've seen that movie.
Oh, of course.
I love that movie. Oh, God. Just trying to go through my roster of teams up here.
Oh, no. Is Chris saying he's never seen Sandlot?
Oh, no. Oh, Chris. Oh, you've got to see that movie. That movie is my childhood. Okay? And that's how we did it when I was growing up. So you got to see that movie. By the way, after we get done with the show, if you got time, 12 Angry Men is going to be on at 1 o'clock, 1:45 Eastern time on TCM.
Oh, I love that movie.
Oh, it's great.
It's been a while since I saw it. It's on my list of movies to possibly buy. I love 12 Angry Men.
Yeah, wonderful movie. Yeah. Let's see. Number twos. Killing me here. That's good. Carson Wentz? No, he was number 1. Forget that. Forget I said it.
Wait, no, that's correct.
That's correct.
Yes,
I thought he was the first overall. Okay, Carson Wentz.
He was number 2. He was number 2 behind Jared Goff, and both of those.
Right, I forgot.
Both of those quarterbacks were trades.
Yeah,
the Rams and Eagles traded up to get those guys. So
and now they traded again to get rid of those guys.
Yeah. Oh, we got Gary Holcomb weighing in, and he has the correct answer. The last one. Last answer.
Go for it. Tell us what it is, Gary.
RG3.
RG3. Oh, yeah. Okay. Right. Oh, man. Oh, that killed me. You're right. And, boy, if it weren't for the leg injuries he sustained when Mike Shanahan kept pushing him out onto the field to make that one playoff appearance, It really is. It makes me wonder what RG3 could have been as a quarterback, because he had an explosive rookie year, and and was playing on one leg at the end of the season, and I think that's just killed him for the rest of his career. I think he could have been a really good one, but unfortunately. But yeah, RG3. So
I mean, you don't want to ever make a decision based on history, and there has to be some context. As you said, RG3's injury played a huge role in his career, and I guess you could say the same for Carson Wentz. Maybe he's been banged up and injured a lot too.
Yeah,
but none of those trading up scenarios really worked out.
No, never, not really.
Yeah.
Especially since Watson was just sitting there ready to be taken by the Bears. But and most Bears fans are still saying, if as long as we get somebody whose last name starts with a W for 2021 at quarterback, we're in pretty good shape. So Wilson or Watson.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Maybe they're still in the Wentz market. I don't know how that would work out. But.
So as long as his name starts with a W, we're doing okay. But God, I wanted to see Watson. What sold me on Watson was that national championship game against Alabama. Auburn took the lead. Alabama came back, and as Alabama was driving, the TV cameras showed the Auburn sideline. And Watson was there and he had his entire offense around him. No coaches. He had his offensive team around him, and they were huddling. Alabama scored, and Watson came right back out there and led his team downfield. They got the winning touchdown, won the national championship. You cannot teach leadership like that. You can't. You cannot teach leadership. And that was leadership. That was a prime example of leadership. And it sold me. It told me that, this is the guy the Bears need. This is the guy that's going to make all Bears fans forget Sid Luckman. And Bobby Douglas and Jim McMahon and Jay Cutler and all the others that have kind of through Chicago at one time or another. This is going to be the guy. And then they traded up, and then they took the wrong guy. So it's just, you can't. If you're going to take a quarterback that high, you cannot miss.
Yeah.
And that's another thing we're talking about Atlanta.
Right.
If you take Fields and you miss, that could cost the general manager his job.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It didn't cost Ryan Pace his job, which is good. He's still getting another year. He's still getting another chance to draft or to obtain a quarterback for the Bears. But, for most teams, that will cost you your job if you miss on the quarterback high.
Yeah.
So,
right.
And that, again, brings me back to Casserly, who I think is taking a more reasoned approach to what the Falcons are going to do this offseason.
I think so too. I agree with that strategy of trading back for sure. And but we'll see. There's a long way to go before the draft. We'll see more mock drafts, and we'll see how free agency goes. And there'll be some movement. It might be moot, because if the Jets decide to move on from Sam Darnold, there probably isn't going to be a quarterback available at number 4.
No. Well, either Wilson or Fields will be available. Who's number 3?
That is a good question off the top of my head. The Dolphins are number 3. You're right. So there could.
So Dolphins aren't going to take a quarterback. A quarterback will be available. So we'll see. We'll see what the Falcons decide to do. But I think if they're smart, they trade back. They get picks, and they build some depth into this roster. That's one of the things this roster has been missing for a while. Back when you and I were writing for Falcon Maven, that was another problem, is just not enough depth on this team to cover injuries. And you're going to run into injury problems during the season.
Yeah.
They didn't have it, and it hurt the team.
Well, you brought up Russell Wilson as still a dream for the Chicago Bears, and maybe he shares that dream with Chicago Bears fans. And before we get into Russell Wilson, I do want to mention to Gary, who is my dad, happy birthday, Dad. I hope you
hey, happy birthday, Gary.
He probably doesn't want me to mention his name, but he's 65 and now eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine. So, it's not all things are bad in Delaware. So happy birthday, Dad. With Russell Wilson, and he came out this week, Tom, and named 4 teams that he would waive his no trade clause. He has a no trade clause, correct?
Right.
And he would waive it in order to get traded. And he said, I would love to play, or would like to play, I'm paraphrasing here, would like to play for the Cowboys, the Raiders, the Saints, or the Bears. And I don't know if there was any –
Twitter went crazy.
I don't know if that was like a power rankings order for Wilson or what. But, yeah, I think, the Bears fans should go crazy because I'm looking at those other teams, and I was saying this to you before the show. Cowboys, we can talk about them with Prescott and a potential, I guess, Prescott-Wilson swap and why that is all rumors. There's no way that would ever happen because of salary cap stuff and all that.
Another thing, Prescott's a free agent. So,
yeah. That is another reason that he would have to sign the tender and then agree to be traded. Sign and trades don't happen in the NFL. So the Saints I think they have the least amount of salary cap space in the league. That you mentioned the Falcons being 30th. Saints are 32nd. So they are they're not trading for Russell Wilson and putting $40 million towards him. So and then the Raiders, last couple of off seasons, there have been questions about whether or not they like or are married to Derek Carr. Haven't heard anything on that front this off season. So that kind of leaves the Bears, right? And I think Gary has given us a comment about the COVID-19 vaccine. If we can see that again real quick, Chris. Getting vaccinated Monday.
Good. That's good to hear. So, the last thing I heard about Derek Carr was that he and the Raiders are in talks for a long-term deal. I don't, again, as far as off-season rumors go, I don't know how true that is. Yeah. But from what I understand, the Raiders and the Raiders are talking about a long-term contract. So I'm not so sure Derek Carr is going anywhere. Which means right now, out of the teams that Russell Wilson mentioned, the Bears are probably the more likely to be in play for acquiring him.
They're the only one, as of today, that need a quarterback.
Oh, yes.
As of today. I mean, it can change because you said Prescott's a free agent. That can change. But as of right now, the Bears
the league year starts on March 17th. So that's when a lot of things are going to start kicking into gear.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised that things are really getting poisonous in Seattle between Wilson and Pete Carroll.
It's really gone bad fast.
There's a lot more coming out now after Wilson gave his initial interview on Dan Patrick's show, where we're finding out that there's a lot of bad blood here between the Seahawks and Russell Wilson. Wilson was upset about the Seahawks going more conservative with their offense in the second half of the season. And, Wilson had a great first half of the season. He was in the MVP talk. Yeah. And he says the Seahawks, Carroll kind of reined back the offense. And that was a big problem in the second half of the season with the Seahawks. Also angry about Pete Carroll and his sons on his coaching staff. That came out in Pro Football Talk. That, he thinks that Pete Carroll's sons have too much power on the team and, even more power than the, position coaches, assistant coaches. So it's really, he hasn't demanded a trade yet, but it is really sounding like they might not have a choice.
It's getting to the point of no return.
Yeah, I think this is getting to, right. Exactly. You can't. At a certain point, you get to statements that you can't walk away from, and the more I keep reading about Russell Wilson in Seattle, the closer I think they are getting to a point where they might trade him. Now, who they bring in, that's another thing. You got to bring in a quarterback to replace him. You still feel like you have a playoff caliber team there. So, I mean, nobody's speculated on that yet as far as what the Seahawks would get back or who they would be able to get to replace Wilson. But if Wilson's situation's getting to be as bad as the Watson situation in Houston, it's almost to a point where you can't see the two sides working together again.
Yeah, Watson wasn't a topic we were going to hit upon and spend a lot of time on today, but yeah, there was some news there as well with him. I mean, doubling down, tripling down, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, he's not budging, I guess is the best way to say it. Is Texans are trying to put an olive branch out to him and say, okay, we're going to figure this out. We want you on the team. And Watson has said he's willing to miss regular season games. I mean, he has no interest playing for the Texans.
No, he doesn't. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that one is already turned into, and I think that goes up to the owner, McNair, Bob McNair, who I think has kind of poisoned that relationship. But with Russell Wilson, it's on the field. It's with your head coach, and that's an even rougher one to get over. So it's going to be interesting to see how they resolve it. As I say, he hasn't requested a trade yet, but he's putting a lot of stuff out there that makes it sound like he does not want to go back to Seattle.
Yeah, absolutely doesn't want to go back. So that's interesting. And we've talked a lot this offseason about quarterback trades and these quarterbacks that are under a contract with these big deals. Wilson is another. He's in the Matt Ryan camp. He's in the Ben Roethlisberger camp. You can't trade him without sacrificing a big chunk of your salary cap towards him if you're the Seahawks.
Yeah.
And that I think the Seahawks are smart. So I guess if they are backed into a corner where they have to trade Wilson, I've read that they're requesting 3 first-round picks. And that is smart, I'm saying, because the point that we made with the Falcons with draft picks, you get players for cheaper value. And the reason why I would say Dallas is not happening, absolutely not, even if they move on from Dak Prescott, I can't see the Cowboys giving up multiple first-round picks for Wilson when they have huge problems with their roster.
Yes.
And even with Prescott, even with the quarterback, they didn't look like a playoff team in September. So I think they have I think they're going to bring back Prescott. It would be my guess and build around him, kind of go back to the draft and rebuild the team that way, as opposed to, is Wilson a better quarterback than Prescott? Sure. Yes.
Yeah, of course.
But he's not going to be that much better where you'd rather have Wilson and no first round pick until 2024.
Right, exactly.
And Wilson's older. Wilson, you can't trade for Wilson at 32 and give up your first round pick until he's 35.
No, you have nothing to build with. I mean, you're going to have a great quarterback with basically, you're going to be in a Deshaun Watson situation. You got a great quarterback. You don't have much around him.
Yeah.
So that's what you're going to end up with. And tell you the truth, I think that might be a problem with the Bears. You don't want to give up so much to get this guy unless you think you can win it all this year. If you're a team who thinks you can win it all this year, maybe you make that move. But you better be able to win it all this year because you're not building anything for a couple of years.
Right. Or you got to be really confident in your second and third round drafting, I guess.
Well, that's true. I say second and third round, you're more getting starter quality NFL players, not necessarily Pro Bowl caliber NFL players. So you really do need, you need to make sure your second and third rounders are starters, and you got to get, you have to be able to go through the entire draft and make sure you're building the depth with your later round picks. It's a rough thing to do. It's a rough thing to build when you're trying to build around that much salary cap. So, and Wilson, he's not going to renegotiate that deal. So that, what you see out there is what you're going to get.
We have Todd weighing in back with the Falcons situation and Mel Kiper's mock draft. He is not a fan of the pick to trade up for Zach Wilson. So
I agree with Todd. It makes no sense. I'm with Todd on that one. So it makes no sense for the Falcons to do that right now. So that's. I think he's got the right idea. One other thing before we get on, move on. I did read this morning that Ben Roethlisberger is willing to renegotiate his deal to stay with Pittsburgh. So it's going to be interesting to see that.
Yeah, the whole Ben Roethlisberger situation has taken a 180 over the last few days, I would say. And Todd is reiterating what we've said over the last 45 minutes, really, that, we like the Falcons trading back as opposed to trading up.
Take your running back, that Smith can work with. Get rebuild on both sides of the line. Use that extra draft capital to get your lines built back up. And I think that's the Falcons. That's going to bring them to the top a lot quicker than going for that, shooting craps, trying to roll a 7 and getting that franchise quarterback out of the 4th pick.
Yeah, you mentioned Roethlisberger. I'll just comment on it real quick. It's interesting that it's completely shifted, that he's now willing to restructure and the team wants him back. I mean, I guess we could say that maybe last week they really honestly didn't know what they wanted to do, and they've evaluated their quarterback situation in a week, and now they've made up their mind. Is that what has happened here? I don't know. Maybe, but it seems very odd that the Steelers were playing hardball, and then all of a sudden they were like, yeah, we want you back. We have confidence.
Some of the times it ends up being a game of chicken on both sides. Who's going to turn away first? It looks like both sides kind of, let it settle and say, okay, here's what realistically we can do. The Steelers are saying, maybe Mason Randolph isn't the guy. Well, you got Ben Roethlisberger, who's won world championships. I mean, this guy has done it.
Yeah.
And if you can keep him, and he's going to take lessen his salary cap hit. I think it's a win-win for both sides.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if he can't play for what he's owed, but if he is restructured, willing to restructure, then that I think is much better option than Mason Rudolph. And I laid out basically why it's Rudolph or Roethlisberger next season for the Steelers last week. Todd says, I think Ben's sticks around one more year. They probably sign a veteran on a 1-year minimum, maybe Cam Newton as a backup.
You never know.
I mean, I don't think the Steelers would do that because they really do seem to have confidence in Rudolph. I'm not saying that Newton isn't a better quarterback than Rudolph. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying from the Steelers' perspective, they already have Rudolph on the roster. It doesn't do Rudolph any services by making him third string because he doesn't get practice reps. It's important for Rudolph to get practice reps as opposed to bringing in Newton on a 1-year deal.
But I think the way Pittsburgh played early in the season last year and the way their season developed and kind of went downhill, though, I think the Steelers probably still feel like they can win now. And, it's still a time where, let's take Roethlisberger and let's take another big run. And, yes, it fell apart in the second half of last season, but, they still showed that they're a dominant team. They got one of the best defensive lines, best defensive fronts in football right now. That's you can really play off of that.
Yeah. And look, a lot of things went sour for the team. I mean, they again, I don't want to reiterate the Steelers' whole season, but they basically played without a bye week. They had a lot of injuries in December that accumulated. They couldn't get the ground game going. Look, there's a lot of things to fix, but they're not that far away in a lot of areas. So I agree with you. They're still in win now mode, and if you're in win now mode, you want to have Roethlisberger as your quarterback. Right. But I did want to get to a little bit of draft talk, draft prospects, and especially from a fantasy perspective, and it kind of ties into that mock draft that we're kind of mocking at this point, the mock draft. But in Mel Kiper's new mock draft this week, he had, of course, the Falcons trading up to number 2. The Jets were at number 2. He had them trading back to number 4 and taking tight end from Florida, Kyle Pitts. And Kyle Pitts is somebody that I'm confident in kind of releasing my fantasy value on him this early, because Pitts is a real slam dunk. He's definitely the best tight end in this draft. And if you're already thinking about your dynasty league and you need a tight end for your dynasty team, Pitts is the guy, and you're going to probably have to have a top 5 pick in this year's dynasty draft in your league to get him. Because even if he ends up on a team like the Jets, he is a real playmaker at the tight end position. Yeah. And for what it's worth, if you like Mel Kiper or not, he said that Pitts probably will end up being the highest rated tight end he's ever evaluated.
I've been hearing that from a lot of people, that this guy is just going to be an incredible talent coming out. And yeah, even if he ends up with the Jets, I agree with you. He's going to make plays. There's no doubt about that. I've seen a few people say, well, maybe he should switch to receiver, be a slot receiver when he comes in. I don't know. I like his projection as a Y tight end. Running down the seam and making life difficult for safeties and linebackers.
I'm just laughing because as a fantasy owner, I want him to stay a tight end. I don't want him to be your wide receiver. I want him to have tight end eligibility. But
there you go.
We're gonna. I kind of cringe at some of these player comparisons, and of course, I'm going to do them or name them myself. But this is the year where we get the young draft picks being compared to the previous stars or current stars in the league. But from a playmaker perspective, Kyle Pitts is being compared to Darren Waller, and that is a guy that really flew under the radar heading into the league and wasn't a high pick. Unless you were watching Hard Knocks and you knew about him, he wasn't a guy that was on a lot of radars in his rookie class for dynasty fantasy football. And I would love to have Darren Waller on my dynasty roster right now. So if Pitts is going to be that kind of player, and you mentioned him switching to wide receiver, I read this morning on The Athletic that he's not a bad blocker, that he's not an excellent blocker. He's not all round great tight end, maybe like a Rob Gronkowski or a Travis Kelce. He's more of a Jimmy Graham type with his playmaking, pass catching ability, but he can do some blocking. So I don't really see the need to move him to tight end. And of course, his value as a dynasty fantasy draft pick this year is banking on him being a tight end.
I think he will be. I don't think he's going to be moved. I think I've seen a lot of speculation, but again, that speculation is because you got about 20 websites and 50 writers coming to be the team's beat writers or fantasy experts or whoever's saying that yeah, you can move him out here. You can do this with him. You can no, he is a Y type tight end, where he'll do a little blocking, but he's basically going to go out into the routes, and he's going to give you terrible matchup problems. He's going to be terrible. You know, he's one of these guys you can post up. Anywhere in the zone, you can post him up and hit him. You can run down the seam. He's going to be tough to cover. You're going to have to keep a safety looking at him all the time. No matter who he ends up with, he's going to be a player for him. He's going to produce. If I were in a dynasty league, I would be looking at him definitely right now. And where are you picking in your dynasty league? What slot do you?
Where am I picking?
Yeah.
Well, funny you ask that. I actually did. I had two quarterbacks we've been talking about a lot today. Dak Prescott was my starter, and my backup was Ben Roethlisberger. After Prescott went down, wasn't overall impressed with Big Ben and didn't think he would win me the championship. So I gave up my first-round pick for Russell Wilson.
Oh, wow.
So I do not have a first-round pick at the moment. Todd weighing in on the tight end market. I think earlier he said Arthur Smith loves tight ends, so I think he's a fan of maybe Kyle Pitts at number 4 to the Falcons. That would be interesting.
You're right. Smith does love to use tight ends, so
he does.
If the Falcons do stay at number 4, you never know. Pitts might be the guy that they take. I would gamble more on them taking Pitts than I would on them taking a quarterback.
I would too. I would like that pick a lot better than the quarterback pick.
So,
but to get back to what your question, I'm hoping to trade back into the first round somehow, and Kyle Pitts is somebody that is on my radar because I was counting on Noah Fant being my starting tight end in Dynasty last year, and Fant had a decent season, kind of injury ridden, and the Broncos can't figure out their quarterback situation. So I'm not down. I guess I am a little bit down on Fant. I haven't given up on him because I think he's a good player. I just think that if Pitts
is a good player, but yeah, he can't stay healthy. I don't think so. Todd is just saying 4 is way too high. I don't think so. Not for a tight end like Pitt. But Fant, I think he's got to show something this year. He has to be there this year. So
Fant, you saying?
Yeah, Fant.
Yeah.
Because he came out with a lot of high hopes. So I don't see him. He has to produce this year, or basically the Broncos are going to have to kind of cut bait on him. Let him go try again at the tight end position. But they still got to fix their quarterback position.
I think that's the much bigger problem. And if Fant is healthy, I guess I'm more confident in him than you are. But I'm not. As a dynasty owner, I'm looking to improve every position, and I think Pitts would be a great asset to pair with Fant, who I guess at this point is maybe more of a reclamation project than a solid starter that you can count on week in and week out.
Right.
But Todd, thanks for all the comments. We can talk more about Kyle Pitts next week as a possible pickup for the Falcons. We got to get going.
We're going to be talking a lot more draft as we come closer, and the free agent market. There's going to be a lot of action, so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and of course that impacts the mock drafts, and it's part of why Tom and I feel like it's maybe not silly, but it's take the mock drafts with a grain of salt at this point. Always take mock drafts with a grain of salt, but definitely now because you don't know what teams are going to do in free agency yet. I mean, everything. The first round is going to completely change if the Jets decide that they don't want Sam Darnold, or if they decide that they want Sam Darnold. I mean, that's the first domino that's got to fall before we really start taking mock drafts seriously.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, Todd, very much for listening and weighing in with your opinions. And we hope to see you next Saturday, 12 a.m. Eastern.
Absolutely.
We're here every Saturday at that time on the Atlanta Sports Unlimited. For Tom, follow him on Twitter at TJ Pollen. I'm Dave Holcomb at DM Holcomb on Twitter. We'll see you next Saturday.